Module 5, Events after 9/11. 9/11 was a significant time in United States history, and the effects of it continue until this day. And we see a large number of policy changes occurring right after 9/11, and a large number of other events also happening as a result, leading to many of the issues that we're dealing with today. Some of the things that occurred as a result of 9/11 was the development of the Department of Homeland Security, which brought together a number of federal agencies under one central authority under the Department of Homeland Security. You have the development of the Transportation Security Administration, the TSA, who became charged with checking people as they go onto airlines, and probably most significantly was the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and the issues that arose as a result. Now, in response to 9/11, there were many people wanting to respond militarily uh, to the people that committed the acts. Now, the intelligence at the time identified the Al Qaeda personnel coming from bases in Afghanistan and parts of Pakistan, and so Baldwin began to conduct a ground war in the region to attack and to deal with the personnel that were involved with that activity or involved with Al Qaeda. But that was not the only thing that occurred. Also, at the time, people started to talk about a war with Iraq as well, which was odd because to this day there has been no linkage of Iraq or Saddam Hussein with anything remotely related to the events of 9/11. Uh, some of the reasons people have attributed to uh, the Bush administration desire to go into Iraq was that many people in the Bush administration were upset that the earlier Gulf War in the 90s did not remove Saddam Hussein. They saw this as a way to remedy that situation. People were making attributing links with Saddam Hussein to Al Qaeda, which have been unsupported. There were people that were saying that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, and at that time that was also unsubstantiated. And there are other calls to liberate Iraq. Now, the war in Iraq, at least the U.S. involvement in Iraq, lasted from 2003 to 2011. Uh, Now, this is a photo op from President Bush at the time in May 2003, kind of celebrating the fall of Saddam Hussein and the events of the Iraq War. The implication being that they were pretty much done, they did what they need to do, and they can now move on. Reality being very different, that attacks from partisan issues of other groups in the area, the instability occurring as a result, continue to affect the region and force the involvement of the United States for many years until 2011. Now, some of the issues that occur as a result of this, and which again are which we're still dealing with, include, you know, the the effects that have had on our military and with our veterans. You know, we still have many veterans who are still recovering from their experiences in Iraq and within the region. There are issues regarding the instability that are now occurring within the region. You know, the action of Al Qaeda and the rise of the group that's referred to as the Islamic State, as well as other situations. Uh, we can also look at how all this impacted activities with people here in the United States, with the economic impact coupled with the fact that George Bush included tax cuts as part of his administration, at the same time funding the wars in both Afghanistan and Iraq. And so the other issue regarding the activities is the impact this has had on civil liberties and attitudes towards the government, where you had many people within the government seeking to increase the intelligence, increase the power of the federal government to monitor and enforce laws on its citizens. Also, the issue of torture on so-called combatants within the region, and the issue of the use of torture to collect intelligence was a big issue. And the issue and the policies that have supported the use of torture we will be discussing in class more in depthly. So in addition to the situation in Iraq and Afghanistan, we also go look at what's been happening to people in the United States, especially those of Middle Eastern descent, those who are Muslim, or those just assumed to be Middle Eastern or Muslim, and the issues of prejudice and discrimination these individuals were facing, and the impact this had on their lives. Again, goes straight to the issue of social determinants of health and how it's been impacting people's well-being. Again, much of the argument, much of the activity experienced by again, people who are from Middle Eastern descent, those who are Muslim, so forth, very much mirror the experiences of those um, of German descent during the time of World War One, the events of or the experience of Japanese descent in World War Two. You know, the identification of or scapegoating of a population in a country who is assumed to be part of a larger movement and are therefore um, this population experienced large amount of prejudice and discrimination due to people's fear. And so then the question becomes, at which point, or can we legislate, can we attempt to create policy in some way to protect the United States pretty much from from its own fear?